how it all went south.
So there is a documentary that's coming out on Netflix at the beginning of the year. I think it's around January 7th. And it's called Fights, Camera, Action. Coming to Netflix. And I saw a trailer for it the other day. And I can't wait. And the reason is it's about the Jerry Springer Show. As you probably remember, it was a cultural sensation in, I think, about the 90s, right? Yeah. 90s, 2000s. And everywhere you looked on daytime television, it was off the rails.
Yeah, it was so popular. And I remember Jerry Springer. Do you remember Jerry Springer before it became the circus that it became? Like when it was actually a real show in the very, very beginning. Do you remember that?
Not really.
Yeah, it was like Sally Jesse Raphael and Maury Povich and all those daytime kind of shows like that. It was like that.
Yeah.
Initially.
Well, he used to be, wasn't he like mayor of Cincinnati at one point?
Something.
So it was like he came from that. Yeah, it kind of, I think you're right. It started as more of the Sally Jesse Raphael, not quite Oprah version of daytime television. Yeah. So I saw that and it made me think of some of the stuff that went on then. And so I started looking into all this stuff and I was on TikTok and of course, I don't know how they know these things. I get one of those Jerry Springer clips from the 90s or the 2000s or whatever. And then I get more and more and more of these videos. And literally my whole feed now in TikTok is Jerry Springer videos. And it is fantastic. And not only that, they're actually starting to kick in a Maury Povich video every once in a while too. So I'm getting the baby daddies and the DNA tests. And
we did a paternity test.
Yeah, right.
We've got the results. Yeah.
So I'm getting all those classics. But something happened. A couple things happened in the 2000s or so that I don't know if you know about or remember, but it made me think that not everything ended well or things went bad after the cameras were turned off. And so the story I'm going to get into right now is a story that occurred on July 24th, 2000. A woman named Nancy Campbell-Panitz, 52, was murdered by her ex-husband, Ralf Panitz, just hours after an episode aired when they were both on the Jerry Springer Show. It featured both of them and Ralph's current wife, Eleanor. So this episode was about love triangles, and it had been shot in May. So they were in the studio in May, and in July, 3 months later, this man beats her and murders her. So the episode was entitled Secret Mistresses Confronted, and Nancy was heckled with the audience members even calling her fat and old. And Ralf and Eleanor, his new wife, accused Nancy of stalking them, and Nancy left the show before the end. It sounds like a pretty common plot line of these shows, right?
Yeah, and look, I mean, not to like jump ahead or anything, but I mean, we were just kind of talking about the Jerry Springer Show, and there's a whole generation of people out there that are younger that have probably seen highlight clips and just social media clips like you talked about, but they never actually saw the show. And the way I saw an interview with him one time with Jerry Springer, and it was saying like, they were trying to be a serious show, and it was, and then these crazy things, these fights and this stuff started happening, and he's like, I just would stand there and watch the audience go absolutely nuts, and the ratings went crazy. And so if you notice, like towards the end of that show, when I think a lot of people stopped watching, but it was like two people would come out, he would basically introduce them, and they would just be fighting in 15 seconds.
And the audience is Jerry. And you remember they even had side characters like Steve Wilkos was the bodyguard.
Got his own show.
It may still be running for all that we know, but like it's wild, right?
Yeah.
So Ralf, the husband, he was convicted of second-degree murder, even though the defense during his trial strongly pushed back on the 3-month timeline between when the episode was originally shot and taped until the actual airing, saying that Nancy had actually died of a heart attack after a fight with someone that wasn't Ralf. But the prosecution said, countering this, they showed 8 bloody footprints that matched Ralph's shoe, and found his DNA under Nancy's fingernails. They could barely identify Nancy when she was found because she was so badly beaten. I mean, really, really bad stuff. Yeah. And so the son of Nancy, Jeffrey Campbell, after she's gone, filed the lawsuit, alleging that the episode appeared to create, quote, a mood that led to murder. And now that lawsuit said that Ralf was encouraged to lie in order to get Nancy on the show, even though he had secretly married this other woman, Eleanor. And even though Nancy and Ralf had been living together after they had been divorced. Now, Nancy was not in the know when she came on the show, right? And was under the impression that her and Ralf could be getting back together on the show. Right. Yeah. This isn't just showing up and like, let's see. There's an architecture to these shows.
Yeah, 100%. It's like any reality TV where they create situations for drama. And I'm not a fan of that, especially in a situation like that. If they're in on it, if they're in on the joke, for lack of a better term, cool. But when you have somebody like that, and then you're embarrassed in front of national television, like you have no idea what that will do to a person. I mean, I'm surprised, honestly, that there's not more cases of suicides or murders or violent altercations off camera than what there actually probably were.
Well, and we'll get into that, but I think the court of public opinion played a really big role into the fate of those shows long-term being on even today.
Yeah.
And there's another show, the Jenny Jones show that we will talk about, that was really, really bad. I don't know if you remember that
I know.
one too.
I think I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah, but to get back to Nancy and what happened to her. So on the day of the airing of the show, which is that July 24th date, she had actually gone down and had a court order that essentially threw Ralf out of the house. And he was really pissed about it. He went to a bar, got really inebriated, and saw the show in the bar, evidently, and got really pissed about it. Came home and then beat and choked her and killed her. Incredible how that all worked out.
But he's the one that that got her on the show, right?
Yeah.
So that's like the thing that's confusing to me, because it seems like she's the one that sort of got laughed off.
She stomped out, yeah.
Right. So I'm confused as to how he would.
I think when she said, "I'm done. You're out of this house," I think he was just probably hammered, saw the show, and just had a visceral reaction like, "I got to take care of this woman." It's just really bad. And so you bring up the great point here, which is someone being humiliated in public. And how do you react to that? Can you imagine being humiliated in front of that audience and a national television audience about anything, frankly? It's just really, really bad.
Yeah, anything. Like, I mean, even those shows where, what are they called? Like there was one called Cheaters or something like that.
Cheaters, yeah.
And I think a lot of that is set up and fake.
Yeah.
I mean, I really
always
do.
have the cameras.
It's what? But think if that was a real situation. I mean, you have no idea how people are going to react to that stuff. Someone could pull out a gun. You have no idea. Shows like that, unless everyone's in on it and it's fully scripted for entertainment, fine. But to do that to real people, I wouldn't be a part of it.
Well, and let's be real. How do I put this? The people that are on the show already got issues.
Sure.
Like
there's
like, sure, I'll go on, and they don't have the in.
Yeah, here's your $500 paycheck for appearing.
Come on to Chicago or wherever it's filmed, and also like they actually do have problems, and they don't care who knows. And by the way, I get to be on Jerry Springer, and I watched that show, so I think it's cool.
Yeah.
So going back to this lawsuit, the lawsuit was moving forward with Nancy's son, and the legal team had expected a big settlement out of this because in another case, Jenny Jones, there was a huge lawsuit about that. So they expected big things, but ultimately, Nancy's son Jeffrey left with nothing, and there's a reason for that. So it involves that Jenny Jones show case, which I think is even more famous. So what is that case? I think, like you said, you remember this. was even worse with huge implications. So in 1995, a man named Jonathan Schmitz had agreed to come on the show, only being told that a secret admirer would be revealed during the episode.
Yeah, that's right.
What he didn't expect was that it would be another man who would have the crush on Schmitz, a man named Scott Amador. Someone he knew. He was an acquaintance of him, so it wasn't just a complete stranger. This was humiliating to Schmitz, and 3 days after the show had filmed, he showed up at Scott's house, shot him twice, and killed him. He then went down to the gas station, called 911, and admitted what he did. And he told the 911 operator that he was humiliated, he was embarrassed, and that episode never aired. So the fallout on this was huge. He was convicted of second-degree murder. There was some overturning rulings, appeals, etc. He had an original 25 to 50-year sentence and eventually served 22 years. So the Amador family was initially awarded $25 million plus in a civil suit. But it was overturned, and the Michigan jury threw that case out against the show, saying the program had no legal duty to protect a guest who had appeared on the show. But even worse than that was the court of public opinion and how damning that was to setting people up on these shows, and this anything can happen, almost like Roman Colosseum gladiator type environment.
Yeah.
Right? Where you put two people in the middle, you duke them out in a blood battle, and you hope one of them dies, and you don't care which one lives. And this was the peak of these daytime talk shows and the downfall of essentially the Jenny Jones show and others. It took a little bit, but it really did change the tone after that.
But you know what, though? I'll say this. People had an issue with that. I mean, I don't watch those shows. I never did. I mean, I'm familiar with them. I know what they are because we grew up around them, but I wasn't a viewer. People who had problems with those shows, a lot of them were probably watchers, right? Audience members, at least watching on TV at home. And so, not to the defense of the people, behind those television shows, but they're trying constantly to push the boundaries and get better ratings and keep it fresh, and you know what I mean. And that's to feed the ever changing attention span of the audience, and the audience is watching it and expecting that. So there's this weird, like, you're partially to blame, but you're also partially a victim for the people watching. That were complaining about this.
And it's crazy, some of the setups, right? Like, hey, this man is really a woman. Like, what they said on air and what they were able to get away with every day is pretty insane too. But like you said, huge ratings, everyone watched, you couldn't look away. I mean, can you imagine, like, looking back, if you were in the studio audience and seeing yourself in the studio audience, now 20 years removed, and be like, what was I thinking back then?
There was a solid 10 almost 15 years probably of those shows. Yeah. So that was dominating daytime TV. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty chilling though to think of taping a show and
and then saying thanks for coming.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm gonna go to this guy's house and just completely destroy him with a couple bullets right in. I mean, that is it's so wild. I remember what both of those guys looked like. It was on the news every single day.
Yeah, because that was, which one came first? The Jenny Jones one was first, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
And that was the first time I think that something like that really had ever happened.
Yeah, and she never really recovered from that.
No, I don't think a lot of the. I think like you said, it changed probably for the better daytime TV.
Such an interesting thing. Like, we didn't know who Jerry Springer was. We didn't really know who Jenny Jones was. But somehow, some way, they got their own TV shows and started all this stuff. If you look at all those like People's Court type things that are on during the day,
that were
there's like husband and wife versions, and
it's so weird. Where do these people come from?
Yeah, well, it gets great ratings. It's very cheap to produce. You can shoot multiple cases in one day.
Yeah.
You can take the rest of the year off. You don't have to give anyone a prize at the end of the day. The sets are,
It's
practically
always the same set.
practically fall over if you leaned on them, And by the way, you can almost cast the people in the back, the people. And look what Judge Judy has made in her career from those syndication rights, like
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Like whatever your moral compass is as any of these, it's also a true statement that it's really hard to walk away from these paydays that could be upwards of $100 million. Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even with the daytime TV ads, the infomercials, they still make a lot of money.
Sure. Yeah.
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 So,
I mean, look, and again, to the point I was making earlier, whatever interview a couple years ago I saw with Jerry Springer, and he was just like, of course it's ridiculous. Of course it's nonsense. It's trash TV. But, I'd walk out, introduce people, and let people fight, and then wrap up the show and go home and make so much money. Like, why would you, I mean...
Well, he had a smile. He had a smile on his face. He always gave you that.
Because he was making tons of money.
But it was like he was just kind of there, and then he always gave that speech at the end, right?
Jerry was Springer's final thoughts or whatever.
Yeah,
Jerry's
I mean,
final
it was
thoughts.
just like every part of that thing had a moment, and I guess it's hard not to laugh and appreciate those times, but also just it's sobering just how bad it was.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that documentary is. What it's about, what the angle is. I'm curious if it actually goes into some of these cases and the backdrop. Is it with their cooperation, or is it a look at how bad that was? And I'm curious. It's a 2-part documentary, so it's not a long series. I'm curious for young people who may not know the story. I'm curious what their reaction is going to be.
Yeah. They're kind of. It's a bygone era. I mean, I don't watch daytime TV now. I don't even know what's on other than like The View, which I'm not going to watch anytime soon. But I mean, that's kind of what it is right now.
Yeah. And they're still there making money too. So, all right. Well, that's what I had. We're going to come back with your story, Sean, right after the break.